Get it. Good morning, Mr. Webster. Thank you for allowing Truth and Consequence to do your interview and learn more about you, your campaign, what you've done, what you're doing, what you plan to do, and how you plan to get South Carolina connected.
That's a big conversation, Deshaundra. It's nice to be here with you. Thank you.
It's a big conversation, but we're not going to hold most of your time. How about that? Just give me 30 minutes. Can you do
I got
that for me?
plenty of time.
Awesome. So, Mr. Webster, many South Carolinians are just getting to know you. Before politics, before business, who is Billy Webster?
Gosh, before politics and business.
Yeah,
I was born and raised in Greenville, and I had the really amazing advantage, Deshaundra, of having two wonderful and loving parents.
awesome.
My parents were hardworking people. My grandfather went broke in the Depression, and my father learned a lot of lessons from that. He worked hard, became a successful businessman, and taught me most of what I know that my mother didn't teach me. My mom was also very involved in our community, and she kept a yellow sticky note on our refrigerator, and it said, "Don't talk, just do." And so most of my life, my parents' expectation of me was to do. And that meant not only doing for others, but when I put my mind to a task, whether it was business or community service, that I was to do it to the fullest extent of my abilities. I have been a competitive athlete most of my life, in addition to business and community service. That really is a big part of who I am. I've run 120 marathons and a handful of ultra marathons, and I've learned a lot about discipline, perseverance, and really focus throughout my athletic career.
Awesome. So you've worked in the highest levels of business and government. You worked for President Clinton. So tell us how you would be able to get the Republicans and the Democrats to work side by side, hand in hand for the betterment of South Carolina.
That is such a great question, Deshandra, and it's a critical question because we live in a time, and it's really one of the reasons I decided to run. We live in a time where instead of politics being a contest of ideas, it's become a political grudge match. There are no winners, there are only losers, and we push ourselves into corners of isolation. Our algorithms on our phone push us even deeper into those spaces, and we've really stopped talking to each other. We've stopped respecting each other's opinions, and that's not. I'm sure that's not the way any of us were taught, and it's not the way Scripture teaches us. So we need to reach out, meet people where they are, be willing to countenance opinions that aren't necessarily ours. And I'll tell you two quick stories. The
Okay.
first is Dick Riley. You're likely too young to remember Dick Riley.
I've
He
heard the name.
very successful two-term Democratic governor, Deshandra, that really is known as the father of public education in South Carolina, at least as far as I'm concerned, he is.
Okay.
He was one of the world's, he was also, and I worked for him as chief of staff at the United States Department of Education. He was my boss at the Department of Education.
Awesome.
Dick Riley, a Democrat, had the ability to, he elevated listening and empathy to an art form. Everybody who walked in his office, either when he was governor or when he was secretary of education, felt like they were heard and understood, and their opinion was honored. And Dick was able to pass a 1 cent sales tax in South Carolina. I mean, you say tax here today, and people run for the exits. And he did it with a coalition of Republicans, business leaders, faith leaders, community service volunteers, and common folk who are interested in education. I learned most of my public service life from Dick Riley. I adore him as a human being, but also as a person who taught me the difference between governing and politics. And I'll tell you a story, a specific
Okay.
story from working for Bill Clinton. Clinton also had that gift. He was able to listen with tremendous focus. Often heard people say when Bill Clinton would walk into a room of 100 people, he would greet everybody by name. He would never look over at your shoulder. If he was talking to you, Deshandra, you felt like you were the only person in that room. And
Awesome.
it's a gift. Most people are looking, who's more important in this room that I can go talk to? Who do I need to see for this or that? Never Dick Riley, never Bill Clinton. They were always interested in you and your opinion. The story, specific story is, and this has to do with working across political lines. Uh, when Bill Clinton was president, Newt Gingrich had been elected Speaker of the House. There was a Republican sweep of Congress.
I remember that.
And there was Newt's sort of catchphrase was the contract with America. And it was a conservative manifesto that, today would not seem so conservative, but in those days it was. And he would stand on the Capitol steps during the day when he was having a press conference, and he'd hold that contract with America up, and he would just harangue Bill Clinton, call him names, talk about the liberal lefty Democrats, just on and on and on. Clinton would be sitting in the Oval Office with one eye on the television with this little wry smile on his face. Toward the end of the day, Gingrich would finish, and Clinton would say, Billy, get Newt over here for dinner. So they would come together and break bread in one of the rooms downstairs.
Okay.
And out of that relationship, which was really out of sight of the public, but out of that relationship came the last two balanced budgets that this country has ever seen. 1997, 1998, 1996 and 97, 97, 98. It came a seminal child health insurance program. We call it CHIPS. We ended the war in Bosnia and Kosovo. One of the last really definitively positive interventions that the United States has done around the globe with a positive outcome. And they passed welfare reform. And and they worked. I mean, Bill Clinton did those things in his second term after the Monica Lewinsky scandal and with a Republican Congress, because both of those men, Gingrich on the Republican side, Clinton on the Democratic side, again, knew the difference between governing for the betterment of the country and politics. All we have today is vengeful, hateful politics. And I can't stand it, and I will not accept it as a candidate or as a governor.
One thing I wanted to circle back to when you said that Dick Riley and President Clinton both had a way of making people feel welcomed and that they were the only people in the room. When I met you at VV Reed that Saturday, you spoke directly to me. You weren't looking around to get back to other people. You actually engaged, and that was really welcoming that day. So thank you.
Well, you're very
Secondly,
kind to say that. I did not. I hope I do that. I know I'll never be as good as Dick Riley or Bill Clinton, but I try.
I love the humbleness. And secondly, I love that you're not running a smear campaign. I see too often right now that people are smearing each other.
Yeah.
And it takes away from the actual what are you going to do to help the people? What are you going to do to improve South Carolina or improve the county? It's always, well, this person is this person is that. But they don't ever stop to think about their constituents and how they actually are impacted with those smear campaigns or whatever. So thank you for, your integrity on that.
You're absolutely right. And my children, your children, I mean, people see the way the folks in power treat each other, and it rolls downhill. Uh, if people think it's okay to call each other names, if people think it's okay to ask that people be hung, like Trump said that Senator Mark Kelly, who was an astronaut, a fighter pilot, husband of a woman, a member of Congress who was shot.
Hmm.
We it's just wrong. I don't care what your politics are. Humanity requires a different response to each other. And I will say specifically with respect to Jermaine Johnson, whom I admire and respect. Look, Jermaine got in this race when nobody else would. For a black man to run for governor of South Carolina is a courageous statement,
It
period.
is.
And we should honor that. One of us will be governor. The other one of us will help whoever is governor make South Carolina a better state. Now, I'm only commenting on Jermaine in this case for a reason. But Dr. Johnson and I have developed a good rapport over this campaign. And I said last night in Florence, we have not exchanged a negative word. And if I do nothing else in this campaign than show people that two folks competing for the same office can love and respect each other, then that will have been enough for me in many ways.
Yeah, I can say watching you all, getting feedback from other platforms and forums that you have participated in, it's always been said that you all are always commendable for the fact that you're cordial to each other, you're respectful to each other, and how you all can shake hands after each forum like you've been friends forever.
Right.
So that's great to
Great,
know.
great respect for Jermaine.
Okay. So, South Carolina's facing some really big issues right now. So one of those issues is Medicaid expansion.
Right.
Um, Medicaid for people who can't afford regular health insurance can help pay for cancer treatments. What's your stance on Medicaid expansion, making sure that people who can afford health insurance and say, for example, had cancer, could get the treatments that they need?
Uh, I'm glad you asked about Medicaid expansion. I was chairman of the board of the largest healthcare system in the state, Prisma Health. I was chairman of the board of Spartanburg Regional Cancer Center, and I'm on the board of MD Anderson Cancer Center, which is the largest cancer, the number one rated and largest cancer center in the world. I teach healthcare policy at Wofford. Medicaid expansion is vitally important to this state for a whole host of reasons, some of which people may not appreciate. First, as you mentioned, we have 500,000 uninsured South Carolinians with no health care. As a moral and human matter, that should be unacceptable to all of us. Uh,
Hmm.
but further than that, Deshandra, as you know, all of those uninsured folk, they get medical care, right? They go to the emergency room. And in the case of those that suffer behavioral health disorders, they go to the most expensive place to receive health care in the state, which is jail. Law
Hmm.
enforcement would much rather have health care than handcuffs. Trust me, that they have to handle very difficult situations that in many cases they're not trained to handle. But so if we expand Medicaid, we will bring down the cost of health care for everybody. All of our health insurance premiums will decline. The reason for that is when those uninsured people go to the hospital and receive care, the hospital receives no money for that today. They book that as uncompensated care. In South Carolina, on an annual basis, uncompensated care is somewhere between $3 and $5 billion with a B that the hospitals have to absorb. They pass that cost along to us in the form of higher insurance premiums and higher costs in the hospital. So Medicaid expansion will insure 500,000 South Carolinians. It will bring down the cost of health care for the rest of us. It will keep rural hospitals open because those hospitals normally in underserved and rural communities are primarily treating Medicare and Medicaid patients. There are very few insured patients who actually shoulder the burden of profitability for those hospitals. Medicaid expansion will keep them open. Medicaid expansion will reduce medical family debt by a huge percentage. Some people say as much as half. In states that have adopted Medicaid expansion, the crime rates have come down, depending upon the category of crime, whether it's violent crime or property crime, but almost all crime rates come down. Look, if you're sick and you're hungry, you're more likely to do bad things than if you're not sick and not hungry. And there are all kinds of positive economic benefits. Uh, it, it, some estimates are that expanding Medicaid will increase the jobs by somewhere between 25 and 30,000, which has a huge tax economic benefit on those counties, somewhere between 120 and 140 million dollars. I mean, the benefits of doing this are profound. And why we haven't done it, there's only one reason. Trump hates it because it was an Obama era legislative initiative. And
Exactly.
he has made it harder for us. The 10 states that haven't passed Medicaid expansion, we have a much harder road than the states who have already passed it. But as you know, it's up to the governor. And I can and will do this on the first day. The very few, everybody says, what are you going to do on the first day? Well, this actually is something you can do on the first day. I'm going to write a letter to Health and Human Services, and I'm going to say South Carolina elects to expand Medicaid. That will push the burden of actually getting it done onto the me and the legislature. And I believe the legislature understands the economic and human benefits of getting this done.
Awesome. Let's make sure they understand the human benefit because no one needs to go without health care or wonder how they're going to decide between eating and being healthy. So that's a good
You know,
thing to
they
know.
know over half of the people that don't have health care are working people. These are not folks sitting at home hanging around doing nothing. They
That's
are
true.
like they're working hard, they're playing by the rules, and they don't have health care, and that's wrong.
So, Mr. Webster, some people said it's too late to expand Medicaid. What's the deadline for that? If there's still like billions of dollars left for it, what's the deadline for us in those other 9 states that haven't decided to engage in it?
There's really not a what to use the word deadline. Trump has made it harder. And, you know, I'm not afraid of harder. Uh, as my parents always used to say, nothing good is ever easy. So this is good and it won't be easy.
Okay.
It's going to take a coalition, just like Dick Riley put together. It's going to take the business community. It's going to take faith leaders. It's going to take community activists. And it's going to take the citizens in each county and in each House district to make the case to their legislators that this is necessary. I mean, think of all of the businesses that rely on service workers, the entire hospitality industry. If people have no health care, if their workers have no health care and they're sick, they don't come to work. You can't run a business when you can't predict whether folks are going to show up to fry the chicken or make the biscuits, in my case, from sort of Bojangles world. I just think there is enough goodwill and good sense around this issue to get it done.
Awesome. So let's go into military for a
Yeah.
minute. So what's your plan for the military families? Not only are people retiring here, some are military that are retiring, but also come here to live because of Fort Jackson. So what's your plan for military and the retired military?
Right. So we have around 400,000 active and retired military folk in South Carolina. That's
Hmm.
like 7.5% of the population. It's a lot.
That's a
Uh,
lot.
we rely on we rely on our retired military not only for the tax base that they represent in the communities in which they live, but they often are able to retire at an earlier age. They are highly trained and they are able to do a lot of stuff that we need. First responders, uh, uh, workers in branch manufacturing. So it is not only a retirement community, but many of them have second careers. We need them here. Uh, but part of the issue, and it's not just retired folks, Deshandra. I mean, military families have unique challenges when they move to a community. Spouses need to be able to get jobs.
Hmm.
If you're working in an important military position and your spouse can't find a job and he or she is running around all day long trying to find one, family life is not so good. So we've got to give businesses a greater incentive through tax credits or other mechanisms to hire military spouses. The dependents of the military have the same issue. You know, you come to school in the middle of February. You don't know anybody. You parachute into a school. The guidance counselor has no idea what your career aspirations are, your academic behavior, your academic achievement. Guidance counselors need to be trained to be military friendly guidance counselors so they can actively manage uh, the children of military families. And you and I both know if your kids are uneasy or not necessarily threatened by school, but just uneasy there. Uh, it's a problem when they come home. There are other, military retirement benefits in South Carolina are not taxed. There are a number of benefits that are both federal and state in nature that currently attach to military families. One place that's not as robust as it needs to be is scholarships for military dependents who go to school, college, career and technical training, career education training, or four-year institutions in South Carolina. We need to do a better job of keeping those dependents in South Carolina because we need them when they graduate for all of the jobs that we're creating through economic development.
Awesome. So we're talking about military people moving here. So, Mr. Webster, one of your big key campaign points is infrastructure.
Yes, ma'am.
So, we have them moving here. We have other people moving here from other states because South Carolina is a welcoming state. We're a part of the South. We welcome everybody.
Right.
What's your idea on how do you plan to fix the infrastructure so that we can basically embrace everyone?
Right. So, you know, we've so I live in Greenville, BMW located here at Deshandra in 1992. For me, that doesn't seem like that long ago. I remember when they built a plant. Uh, our state has added 50% of its population since BMW located here. We've added 1 million people in the last 15, 16 years. We will add 1 million more in the next 10. We are not ready. We are behind by a wide margin, and we're behind because we did not organize and see this coming. I'm going to give you a couple of examples.
Okay.
Uh, the legislature in 2017, a Republican legislature, passed the gas tax. To their credit, we should have done that. Uh, and it's about 28 cents a gallon.
Hmm.
Uh, Compared to other states, you know, it's not outsized. It's not a bad number. Could be more, or some people argue it should be less. But what we didn't do 10 years ago is we didn't index it to inflation. So 1 penny of road tax in 2017 paved about 115 miles of road. Today, that same penny paves about 80 miles of road. So that penny has depreciated in value because it wasn't indexed to inflation by 25 to 30%. But worse, the cost to build the roads that we have had to build in the last decade uh, has gone up considerably. All of our major projects are over budget by somewhere between 30 and 130%. So our gas tax does not do the economic job that it needs to do to repair roads, bridges, sewer systems, water systems with the velocity that we need to keep up with this influx in population. There are other ways to leverage other people's money to build roads. If you drive across Lake Norman in North Carolina or you drive to Atlanta, you'll obviously, I get on them all the time. You get in the fast lane, right? You get in the lane if you've got more than one person in the car, where you can go faster and you can bypass the regular traffic. Those are typically built by private contractors. And they get the toll. The private contractor doesn't necessarily, I'm not sure if it's technically they own the road, but they get the revenue from the cars that drive on that road. But that's not the state's money that has to build it. We need to do more of that.
Hmm.
If we do not act, South Carolina will be a parking lot in 10 or 15 years, and it will take you 3 or 4 hours to go from Columbia to Charleston. But the more important point here, Deshandra, is uh, infrastructure, conservation, and development, managed development, are three legs of the same stool. We have to evaluate and assess all of those initiatives together to create a functioning, futuristic, statewide plan that overlays development and infrastructure and conservation. And I want to highlight the conservation piece here because while we are adding all these people, we have not added 1 acre of land. Uh, Everywhere that we develop, we are either paving over a family farm. Every shopping center we build, it could, in the low country, it backs up to salt marshes. We must protect the beautiful places that make South Carolina such an amazing place. And, a lot of folks won't know this, and it is substantively verifiable. $1 spent on conservation returns $9 in economic benefit to our state. And a lot of that is storm mitigation, flood mitigation, wind mitigation on the coast. But even as far up, as Greenville, this is where we get our clean water from. This is where we hunt and we fish and we recreate. And you can't make those places anymore. If we allow them to go away, they're gone forever. And we just, I refuse to oversee a state my kids don't want to come back to.
Exactly. So that's great to know. You just answered my environmental conservation, also how you would balance economic growth and protecting natural resources. So you basically answered that. So thank you for that.
I'll just add parenthetically, I was chairman of the board of the Nature Conservancy, which is South Carolina's largest conservation organization. We deal with this all the time. If you have a say, I'm going to give you one example.
Okay.
The Nature Conservancy, along with considerable private philanthropy, public-private partnerships, as well as the State Conservation Bank, we bought a 4,500 acre piece of property called Chelsea Plantation. Chelsea Plantation is uh, kind of mm, a very significant place in the state in Jasper County where a lot of our river systems rise.
Mhm.
Critical estuary salt marsh environment. And that piece of property, before we bought it, was zoned for 4,500 homes. 4,500 homes is 9,000 cars a day
Yeah.
dumped onto a road that is already ill prepared to deal with the traffic it's carrying. Um, and we bought that piece of property. We divided it into four, I think four, maybe five bits,
Okay.
and put a conservation easement on each and sold off those in 1,000 acre plots. So four 1,000 acre plots. So that's 8 cars instead of 8 or 9,000. And we have preserved one of the most significant from many perspectives, large pieces of property in the basin that empties into Port Royal Sound and the lower part of the state. That is the kind of transaction that this state needs to be able to undertake on a much more rapid, much more significant basis. That's going to require, as I said, statewide conservation plans that are properly funded. If that had turned into 4,500 home sites, that is irreversible damage to one of the most important and beautiful places in our state.
Oh, wow. I'm going to turn the questions to something that's been trying to come at you for a while. So, Mr. Webster, you have four businesses.
Yep.
Um, but the thing is, people aren't focusing on your automotive parts business, Bojangles, and I forgot your laundromats, right?
Right.
Okay, they're not focused on that. So, Mr. Webster, they're basically focused on this advanced America and how it and disenfranchise people. So let's go to this. Critics point to your history with advanced America and say payday lending harmed vulnerable communities. What do you say to voters who have concerns about that chapter of your career?
Thank you for asking the question, and it's essential that you ask it because it is misunderstood.
Okay.
Uh, Deshandra, every business that I have started was successful because it met a need. It either provided a service or it met a need. Uh, in 1997, when we started Advance America, there was virtually no access to credit for working middle class families. And I want to emphasize working middle class families, families with a job and a bank account. This is not the unbanked. This is not poor people. These are people with a job and a bank account. Uh, in that year, 1997, 400 million checks bounced. Average size of a retail consumer bounce check was less than $100. The fees on that $100 check were usually $25 to the bank and $25 to pick a place, Walmart, corner drugstore, Hardee's, doesn't matter what, Bojangles, doesn't matter what it was. But the fees for $100 were somewhere between $40 and $60. The regulated rate for $100 at Advance America in South Carolina was $15.
Okay.
Everybody understands that. I mean, I interviewed, I love spending time in my stores, not laundromats, Bojangles, Advance America, automobile parts places. You, unless you know what customers are thinking and feeling and doing, you can't really connect with the transaction or the service, the product you're trying to deliver. I never heard a single person complain about the cost. What the problem was, and we learned this over time, is people would walk out of Advance America and go somewhere else and get another payday advance. And we tried to stop that. I wrote the database law that we implemented in Florida so that people could only have one advance at a time and they had to pay it back before they could get another one. That law was eventually passed in South Carolina. So what I would tell you is this. Uh, for folks who've never needed $150, they don't understand the business. But if you've needed $100 or $300 and you need to, our primary uses were automobile repair, healthcare expense, childcare expense, school supplies. People weren't taking this money and going and buying lottery tickets. They were solving problems for which their only other alternative at the time was bouncing a check. And that's why the business was successful. In 2005, shortly after we became a public company, my ex-wife got a very aggressive form of breast cancer. I had four really little children, 1, 4, 7, and 9. I quit work and went back to my family to raise my kids. Uh, and then some years later, the company asked me to come back to sell the business, which I did. But I wish the business were not as misunderstood as it is. But I can't change that today. What I can tell you, Deshandra, is nobody knows more about consumer finance than I do. If there are abuses in this space, and by this space runs from bank fees all the way to small loans that you see on the street corner in underserved communities.
Hmm.
Where there is abuse in that space, I will help deal with it. Now, as you know, has to come from the legislature to start with, but I understand it, and I can help working middle class families sort through those alternatives.
I love that. Thank you. So, Mr. Webster, South Carolina's a red state. Okay. So, how do you think that you can compete statewide? And why, as a Democrat, that you should be elected governor?
Let's start with that. As a Democrat, I should be elected governor because as a Democrat, I believe in hope. I
Okay.
think the future needs to be better than the past, and you and I have an obligation to make it so. Uh,
Mhm.
and the things we've talked about today, Medicaid expansion will make people's lives better. Preserving our state and allowing it to evolve into a place that our children and grandchildren love means we are proper stewards of what we have been given. I've spent my entire life in education. My wife is a public school teacher. I understand that space. I believe I can make it better. And we've got all these affordability issues. And look, the legislature called itself back into session in 24 hours to cheat on redistricting, a well-settled process that we've had since 1790. We redistrict every 10 years when there's a census. But the legislature felt like it was so important to redistrict. But what about affordability issues? What about Medicaid expansion? Why that's not important, I do not understand. I understand why they want to do redistricting because they know they're going to lose the midterms and they want to cheat.
I think, you think about why they didn't think about affordability or Medicaid. think about when people don't have to experience those type of hardships or have to
Yeah.
think about those things, your problems aren't their problems. But that goes into my next question. What do you say to Republicans or independents who may not usually vote Democratic, but are listening to you? How do you appeal to them?
We talked about the substantive reasons that I got in this race.
Hmm.
The philosophical reason I got in this race is because I was raised to believe that you love your neighbor and you treat others like you want to be treated. Uh, the lack of civility in public discourse has finally pissed people off enough that they want to stop it. Uh, every moderate Republican I talk to is fed up with name calling, viciousness across party lines. Uh, my parents, when they were asked about their political philosophy, used to say, "Well, I vote for the person. I don't care whether they're a Republican or a Democrat." Nowadays, people say, "Well, gosh, she's a Democrat. I can't vote for her. He's a Republican. I can't vote for him." I just don't accept that as the reality in this state.
Exactly.
We have been better than that almost all of our history. What has happened recently is just wrong, and I don't believe that people want it to continue. I will treat others like I want to be treated. I will reach out to Republicans because I know them, I understand them. Many of my friends are in the legislature and they're Republicans. Uh, I've got, my college roommate, one of my roommates is Trump's ambassador to the United Kingdom.
Wow.
Uh, I don't like anything much that Trump does, but I like my college roommate, and we got to bridge this political divide uh, in human terms, in governing terms, but we can't do it in political terms. People are just sick of it. And that's how you reach the disaffected majority of folks in this state, Republicans or Democrats.
Okay. Awesome. So now before we get to start wrapping this up, I got a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned Jermaine working with your camp with you for your governor. I've seen Steve Benjamin on your commercials. Who do you have in mind for your running mate? If it's not even one of those guys, if you don't want to tell me, if give me some initials, let me guess it through.
I will give you the honest answer, and you kind of referred to this in your very first question. I was so late getting in this race, Deshandra, that nobody really knows who I am.
Hmm.
And you are a marketing person. I can't complicate my narrative right now by introducing another personality to it. The honest truth is, I have given no thought to
Okay.
who my running mate is. Uh, I am in this election to win. Second place does me no good. Second place does those without a voice no good. Uh, uh, Winning isn't everything. To me, it's the only thing. And I will do what it takes to win this election. And that includes who I pick as lieutenant governor. I was tangentially involved in Clinton's selection of Al Gore. And that was a rigorous process. Whoever I consider, I'm going to have to know everything about their background. The last thing you want to do is pick somebody and have it turn out to be a disaster, right?
Right.
Then that becomes the issue instead of governing. So it is a weighty decision and one that I have not considered yet.
Okay. So I'm gonna correct you on one thing. I don't do marketing. I'm actually an accountant. I
Oh,
started doing, yeah, I am. I started doing this because I got tired of hearing false narratives put out in the community. So I wanted people to know the truth and hear it firsthand for themselves, which is why I started Truth and Consequence. It's not about marketing, it's about me making sure that the public is properly educated.
well,
But I'm an accountant.
It's about the best name for a podcast I've ever seen. So I figured you were a marketing person. I like the branding.
Thank you. But I love accounting. I've been doing it for a long time now.
Do you do it for a business or I mean, are you do
We
tax?
can talk offline.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay. And my final question. If South Carolinians remember one thing from this conversation, what do you want the message to be?
The sticky note that my mother had, don't talk, just do.
Don't
I'm not
just
going to talk a lot about who I am or what I've done, but I will get stuff done in the state. I know how to do it.
Okay, great. Those are all the questions. Just hold for me. I'm gonna stop this and we can talk offline.